Again, tonight, the title of our program is entitled Resilience, Revolution, and Fannie Lou Hamer. The program, again, as Kelly mentioned, is part of an ongoing partnership. We've had such great pleasure of working with Intersection. So let me introduce you to our conversationalists. Starting off, immediately to my left, Tasneem Grace Tewogbola, born in Washington, D.C., but loves to brag that she grew up in Syracuse, New York, but some way ended up here in Nashville. Tasneem is a writer, editor, artist, storyteller, and we're most proud of her work here at Nashville Public Library as a program coordinator. While her work expands across the globe, we are delighted to tune in tonight to see what Tasneem will lead us through conversations with our amazing artist residents. A native Texan, I learned, Hannibal Lokumbe, most notable American jazz trumpeter. His work has been, one piece in particular, has been performed over 55 times, I learned. And we are excited to have them both in conversation. Hopefully we will learn a little bit more about Fannie Lou Hamer, her influence on music, and all of our lives. Again, please join me in welcoming Tasneem Grace Tewogbola and Hannibal Lokumbe.
Thank you, Andrea and Kelly, and welcome you all here this evening. Brother Hannibal, I heard you told someone to call you Uncle Hannibal, so yes. I might go in and out of that.
Could we ask all of our babies to come up front, please? All the kids to please come up front. That's one thing the great Mother Parks told me, to always tell the babies to come up front, Hannibal. I spent enough time in the back of the bus, so come up front. Even when you're in school, make sure you sit up front so you can see. Come over here up front, please. There you go. Let's give our babies a nice round of applause.
Marvelous. Thank you, good young people. Well, let's talk about some history, and hopefully the babies will be able to connect to who is Fannie Lou Hamer to you. I mean, so many people think activist, singer. There's so many different ways you can speak about her, but who is she to you?
I would say a saint to me.
A saint.
She's a saint to me, and very, very sacred. 26th child of sharecroppers in Mississippi, which was one of the most brutal places for people of color that ever existed. She lived a life proving that with a song, you can change the world. And the way she would sing This Little Light of Mine, it lets you know that the light she was talking about was a light that existed forever. It was a light that could change the heart of people. It was a light that could heal people. And it was a light that came from eons ago. It was a light that you could, in my opinion, accurately call God. And that's why when she sang this song, people were renewed. And the Creator is very renewing.
When we talked earlier, you talked a lot about the role of the Creator, of nature, and the ancestors, and how you create your music. Can you tell the young people about that?
Well, when I have a new piece of music to write, if you imagine a blank sheet of paper with nothing on it, I have to first imagine something to put on the paper. In this case, notes, because I write music, I also write text. And whenever the ancestors give me something I call my mission, when they give me a mission to accomplish, the first thing I do is to get out of my own way. And to do that, I go to the forest and I pray. And I ask the Creator to show me what it is I'm to write. often I realize that what I thought the assignment was is totally different than what it turned out to be when I went and asked God what it was to be. For example, in a piece I wrote called One Land, One River, One People, I thought the one land was Africa. I thought the one river was the Nile. I thought the one people were people of color. But the ancestors taught me that the land is the body. One land is the body which we all have. The one river is the blood which we all have. And the one people is the spirituality which we all have.
That's beautiful. You mentioned that your grandfather always spoke about imagining wealth and accomplishment being something that would be for the generations 25 years ahead. What do you wish for those who are coming in 25 years?
I want very much for them to realize that if you take your hands and you put it this close to your face, you feel an energy, and that energy is all of the validation you need in life ever about anything, that you are sacred and you come from something that is sacred, because energy can't be created and it can't be destroyed. So this is my ultimate description of the Creator.
We know that you're from Texas and you live in Philadelphia sometimes. You've lived in New York City. You lived in different places. When people talked about Fannie Lou Hamer, they said she had Mississippi in her bones. Ooh. So what place is in your bones?
Oh, I would say where my ancestors are buried in Smithville, Texas, where I was born. And just recently, the last of my mother's 12 siblings, we put her into the ground, into this sacred ground called Clearview Cemetery, where the bones of my great-grandfather, Silas Burgess, who was born in Africa and was put aboard the slave ship for 5 months on his back in chains, along with his younger brother and his mother. We don't know what happened to his father. And on this ship for 5 months, in this hell, in this abject hell of darkness and moans and screams and blood and feces, they were finally let off the ship in shackles in Charleston, South Carolina, and was bought by a rice plantation owner by the name of Burgess, who paid extra money for them because they came from a rice-growing culture in West Africa. And from there, they went to the auction block, and their teeth were tested, their testicles were tested, their skin was tested, the suppleness of the skin, and they were looked upon as how they could produce more workers, more slaves, which was to exist even to this day. But here you are. Here I am. That's God. Man's plans are quite often different from the Creator's plans. So when we listen to the Creator's plans, then we do the work of the Creator. We could never enslave someone else. We could never do it. So he escaped the plantation when his younger brother was sleeping by the fire in the slave quarters. From the rape of Burgess was born Hamlet. And this is where all of the light-skinned people in our family came from. I always asked the questions that no one wanted to answer. Why is my uncle so bright? Why is this one so... Be quiet, boy. And when you tell me to be quiet, that's the wrong thing to do. So it came from Burgess' raping of my great-grandmother, and from that raping was born Hamlet. And so Burgess, the plantation owner, came one day looking for my great-great-grandmother. Before he came, she sat the three of them down, the two of them down, and they had a Last Supper. See, that stuff is real. It's not imaginary. There's a point at which we will not have a supper together again. We never know. But that was her Last Supper. And somehow she had smuggled a cowrie shell, which is very sacred in the African tradition. She smuggled that cowrie shell, and a cowrie shell and a handkerchief and some pieces of cornbread. That was their Last Supper. And she left because she couldn't stand being raped and treated inhumanely anymore. Never heard from her again. So my great-grandfather was holding Hamlet, the baby from the rape. And his brother, who came with him from Africa, was sleeping close to the fire. And he caught on fire. My great-grandfather, who at this time was 14, he woke up and it was too late because he was holding Hamlet. And in our family, there was always this contention between the dark ones and the lighter skinned ones. And that's why, because they said he should have been the one that died. It's extraordinary how these things happen in our lives that we don't understand at the moment. But there's always this intrinsic, there's always this divine plan that's in motion. This is a lot. I know this is a lot to answer your question. But eventually he escaped and he migrated to where I now live. The question about what's most sacred to me. And he cleared the railroad. For 2 years, he worked clearing the railroads. And so every time I hear the train, the Southern Pacific train go by, I hear my great-grandfather. Yeah. And with that money, he bought 101 acres of land. And on that land, he raised, between his first wife who died, my grandmother's mother, and his second wife, he raised 22 children. And he built the first school. He built the first school for people of color in Bastrop County. Bastrop County is almost as big as Rhode Island. The first school. So when I ride across Cedar Creek, that's where he baptized my mother. When I ride on Upton Road, that's where he built the first church for the first school for our people. So that's my place.
That's in your bones.
That's my chill place.
Love it. You also have a connection to Tennessee. You were telling us about your elder, your ancestor, who was a part of the Trail of Tears.
Yes, my great-grandmother was a Cherokee shaman and a healer, and she was part of the Trail of Tears. And when they got to Middle Tennessee, on their way to Oklahoma City, she broke away and hid out on the Colorado River in a cave. Lived in a cave, babies. Lived in a cave. No heat, no TV, no iPhones, no, snakes. In Texas, big rattlesnakes. Think of all of that. And she lived in a cave, no central heating. She lived in a cave till she met my grandfather's father. And as a way to protest, always remember, there's something you can say that can fight against something you know is wrong. Don't ever feel that there's nothing you can't do to fight against something you know that's not right, right? So one of her ways to protest was that she refused to learn the English language. She would only say good morning and good night. And when you get up older and you have mates that you like and you love, always remember, If you say good night to them, that means that you are in harmony. If you say good morning to them, that means that you're in harmony. Remember that. If you don't say good night, that means you're mad or something. You didn't get what you want.
You have a big work coming out.
Oh, Lord.
Yes, in Philadelphia for the travelers. And you've talked about it in terms of veils. You've mentioned war and peace and healing. What are your prayers for healing for us today in 2019?
We simply have to listen to all of the shamans that have come before us to remind us that we are sacred. We have so much information. We have history. And politicians love people who are unaware of history because they have a tendency to think that it never happened before. So what Richard Nixon did to destroy the movement that Fannie Lou Hamer, among others, began, he said, how can we counter this? It's too frightening. They're all together. They're marching by the thousands. Well, we got to do something. Yeah. So he got his council together, his council of his den of thieves, of cultural and spiritual thieves. He got them together, and they started to meet with the drug czars, the Colombo family, and all of these different gangs. And they said, let's flip the script on them. So the person in the neighborhood who everyone loved and who loved everyone and who loved the children as his own or her own, they all of a sudden became the squares. They all of a sudden became the ones that were not popular. And then all of a sudden, the drug dealer who came in with the drugs and the big shiny Cadillac and obviously carrying a pistol, who could shoot the community leader that the people loved and not spend a day in jail. Because from the highest office in the land, it had been laid into plan. And this is in all the communities of color where no one locked their doors, including Harlem. All of a sudden, we became afraid of the kids. And all of a sudden, the heroes were the gangsters. And the Malcolm X's and the Medgar Evers and the Fannie Lou Hamers, they became the squares. So in my generation, the object was to be a great scholar. So I had pictures of Thurgood Marshall on my wall. I had pictures of James Baldwin on my wall. Not drug dealers. Now they're drug dealers. And now babies, they're afraid to make an A. They think something's wrong with them if they make an A. Well, I thought something was wrong with someone if they made an F or a C.
Beautiful. Can we prepare to hear some music? We're gonna hear some music. Excuse me. And can you bring some healing tones to us?
Yes, you need some water. Let me get you some water.
I do need a little water. Thank you. Thank you. Pardon me. After the performance, we'll have time for questions with Brother, pardon me, Uncle Hannibal.
Yes, so I'm to introduce the musician.
You are to introduce the musician.
All right, so this is a piece of music I wrote in honor of Fannie Lou Hamer. It was commissioned by the Kronos String Quartet, wonderful group. I like paying homage to people who have lived a life of sacrifice, and she's one of them. I regret I haven't spoken even more about Fannie Lou Hamer. There's a series of letters that she wrote to her dear friend Rose Tishman in Connecticut. And in some of those letters, she described very important incidents in her life. One was the night that the Klan came by and shot up her house that she had bought by the generosity of Rose Tishman, her friend, where she had to lie down on the floor because of to save herself from being killed. And this happened because in Mississippi, if a person of color would be in their house at night with the light on and the shades not be drawn, it was an act of protest. So many of our people got their houses shot into because, in fact, they were in the house at night and did not lower the shades. So this is just one of the extraordinary experiences she had to go through. So I'm honored to have written this piece about her, and I look forward one day to going to her grave with my trumpet and giving thanks.
Serenading her. Thank you. All right.
This To me home to watch and tall and strive. What is the price of freedom? Born into a tower of wails and war. Oh, mother, I cry for you. Your crown hidden in the chest of thieves. Oh, Father, I weep for you. Your magic spent behind a plow and mule. I am your crown, mother. I am your magic father. People should be free. Just look at the clothes and you will know that people should be free. So if I have to walk for my freedom, if I have to walk for my freedom, I will have to walk for my freedom. I will walk for my freedom. If I have to cry for my freedom, if I have to cry for my freedom, I will have to cry for my freedom. I will cry for my freedom. If I have to sing for my freedom, if I have to sing for my freedom, I will have to sing for my freedom. I will sing for my freedom. If I have to die for my freedom, if I have to die for my freedom, I will have to die for my freedom. I will die for my
Thank you so much. We were so honored and privileged to get to play this. This is Shannon, Sari, Gwen, Annalise, and Annalisa. So thank you so much for coming. It's such an honor. Thank you, Hannibal Lokumbe. It's a pleasure.
Whew. Wow. The part where she repeated the phrase, God is my comfort, this is to tell the story of her being in a jail in Winona, Mississippi, and the white sheriff told the black men who were in the jail to beat her So they took a wooden club and she laid on her stomach on the platform and they began to beat her. And they were weeping as they beat her. But the white sheriff said, if you don't beat her, we're gonna beat you. And they were beating her, and all she was trying to do to show you the dignity, human dignity, all she was trying to do was keep her dress down. But in the midst of all of that beating, her spirit said, God is my comfort. And this is what helped her survive the beating, which she never really recovered from. It injured her kidneys. She almost went blind in one of her eyes. Her arm was in a cast for 4 months. So the symbolism of this, you heard the madness in the strings, right? That represented the madness of people who would want to do that to another human being. And in the end, her strength, her faith, calmed the madness. That's why it went from this wildness to this peace. Always remember that. No matter what you're suffering, babies, there's always peace in you. So Nelson Mandela could be locked up in a jail for 27 years, and when he gets out, he makes the very people that put him in jail wrongly, he acknowledges them.
Before we get to our questions and answers, can we thank Hannibal Lokumbe for bringing us this powerful storytelling and melody? Who has a question for Mr. Lokumbe?
Yes, Uncle Hannibal. I would like to know that you write all of the scores played tonight and what inspired you to compose the music played tonight?
In a little 3-bedroom apartment in the projects where my mother so graciously took care of my brother and I, there was an entrance to the projects. And for me, my best friend was the nature when I was you baby's age. I'd watch the sky. I learned from the sky. I learned from the rivers. I learned from the wind. I learned from the rain. I still do. The sky was my best friend, though. Always new pictures, every second, new information. And I began to dream a lot. And then one day I had this dream that this lady with a wrap on her head had a wheelbarrow, and she was pushing it towards the apartment where I lived in the projects. And when I got up to her, I said, "Ma'am, what is that you have?" And when I looked into the wheelbarrow, all of these notes started rising up. And I told my mother, I said, "Mama, I had this dream of this lady." And the next day, I saw her on the television, and it was Fannie Lou Hamer. So in my dream, she bought me this piece when I was 14 years old. And from that dream, I wrote this piece. That's where the feeling of this piece came from. In the very beginning, there's this very high pitch in the violins. That is to symbolize her spirit coming into the flesh. I was always considered a weirdo. You know, I like basketball, but I like music more. And I love studying. So I was always that weirdo that only a few people could understand, my mother and one of them. And I'm still weird. My wife will really attest to that. I left 5 in the morning the past morning, and I got here 12 o'clock last night, drove all the way. I had to fight her. You shouldn't be driving, you know. Yeah, I'm 70 years old, but I can still do 3 push-ups. Wow. Yeah, so I'm a weirdo.
Brother Hannibal, thank you so much for spending time with us this evening. Thank you very much.